Welcome to another episode of Euphoric, the podcast. I'm sitting across from Kat, who has been in so many different social circles that I've been in, especially around entrepreneurship. And we really bonded over the fact that we both ditched alcohol many years ago and have gone on to grow business empires. So I'm so excited to sit down with another successful woman who doesn't drink and really go over this hot topic. It's talked about so much on social media right now, nervous system regulation. But does anyone even know what that means and what it entails? So I can't wait for this conversation, Kat. Why don't we get started a little bit about how you decided to eliminate alcohol from your life and what resulted from that, and then how that eventually led you into growing the business and just the life that you have today? Because
Mm.
I just love putting more successful women who don't drink on a platform and on the pulpit to just show that this is that secret to success that most people just don't understand, even if it was a rocky journey to get here.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I know we had you on my podcast, and I just love jamming with you on this topic. It's just so good. So I'm excited to have this conversation today as well. So my journey with alcohol was pretty rocky for many years. I grew up, like probably many, in a household and an environment that really normalized alcohol and even overconsumption of alcohol. And so that was just a normal part of my upbringing at family gatherings and stuff. Everyone was always drinking, it was very social. And I kind of always had a rocky relationship with alcohol where I often took it too far. I often just felt really anxious the next day after drinking. And it didn't make me feel great. And I went through these phases where I'd stop drinking for a few months and kind of do like a dry January thing or be like, I don't really like this. I'd be going through a healthier phase. Um, and then when I was 22 in college, my brother died actually due to an alcohol related accident. So, over the next several years, I went on a deep healing journey and started my own healing process, finding yoga, getting into the body, all of these things. And then later on, I reached this point where I wasn't drinking as much. I didn't have as much of a problematic relationship with it, but I just kind of felt this desire to run almost this challenge for myself and say, what if I take this month off from drinking completely? And like I mentioned, I had done that before, but this time I was actually honoring my brother. It was the same month that he had passed many years before this. And I was like, I'm going to honor him and I'm going to not drink at all this month. At the end of the month, I had this different relationship with having a period without drinking at all. I felt so good. I felt clear. I felt like I was hitting my workouts. I felt healthier. I was making just better decisions overall with everything. And I just said, I'm going to quietly continue this. And it's just going to go as long as I want it to go. And then it kept going and it kept going. And within a couple of months, I met my now husband. I hired my first business coach, went all in on my business, really blew up my business over that next year. And since then, this was back in 2019. And I really credit so much of what's happened in my life since then to that little decision to try life without alcohol. And I also noticed something that was really powerful in the leadership component of being able to stand so boldly in something that's so societally acceptable and just normalized, and you're almost so outcast. I think that's changing a lot now, of course, but especially back then and still sometimes now, it's almost like, what, you're not drinking? This is weird. And so you really have to own your stance and your leadership. And it's amazing, even my husband has never really been a drinker, so I never really probably would have connected with him if I was still drinking socially. We wouldn't have been a great match. And so it just has, I believe, I mean, we can talk about the nervous system impact as well, because it impacts your nervous system and your mental health, your physical health, really everything, as I know that you talk about a lot and know already. But yeah, that was my journey with giving it up.
Oh my gosh. I just love to hear that because it proves what I say over and over again of like how exponentially your life can grow in so many different areas when you remove this one little thing. And it's
Mm,
interesting because like if as far as I understand from your story, you'd already been doing like the yoga, you'd already been kind of
yeah.
getting yourself into personal development and stuff. So it's not like you were, at the depths of,
No,
a
no.
very, ignorant life and just kind of like
Yeah.
using alcohol to cope. It was like you're already really growing a lot, but the things probably aren't happening fast enough. They're not really lining up the way you want to. And then you remove this one thing, and all of a sudden, like the trajectory of your life changes. And I just think
Mm.
it's so valuable to recognize that, like, there's so many areas, whether it's business, relationships, fitness, health, like all wealth, all of it, can be related back to that. And I know now that you have this like really incredible brand around being wealthy and well. You're writing a book on the topic and you talk a lot about the nervous system. And I really wanted to bring you on as like the nervous system expert because I think it's something that's thrown around a lot on social media, this terminology and stuff like that. But I think like most people don't really understand what it means, what it entails, how you can, identify yourself either in an over-regulated or a regulated nervous system versus like a frazzled one. So I'm curious, let's just pretend we're talking to someone who like has no idea what we're talking about. What is like a nervous system, and how would you want to have a regulated one? Like, what are just the basics of understanding for this concept?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the nervous system lingo and language is thrown around everywhere. And you know what? I'm guilty of this. I have been a yoga instructor for 12 years. So there was a lot of time where I was working with the body. I had done over 700 hours of training. I had even done training in yoga for anxiety and trauma and depression. So I had worked a lot. I mean, I have a psych degree. So I had worked a lot with the brain, the body, the connection. And I would throw stuff around like with the nervous system, not really notice it, not really realizing that I was only scratching the surface. And I still thought this common misconception, which you listening, or you may have seen it related to this as the nervous system regulation means to just be calm, really zen. And so a lot of people think of this as being in a meditative state and you're just nothing upsets you, you're never frazzled, you're super calm. And that is not actually what nervous system regulation is at all. And a little while back, I actually had this realization of, wow, I've been doing yoga, practicing yoga, teaching yoga, doing regular meditations, eating really well, not drinking, all of these things. And I'm still living in a survival state a lot of the time as a high achiever, having these patterns that are deeply ingrained in me. There was still a lot of that push and that force running all the time. And so, what it means to be dysregulated is you get stuck in one state. So, we have sympathetic energy, and then we have more of the dorsal vagal energy. So, the sympathetic energy is what people think about with fight or flight. That is when your body is releasing adrenaline, cortisol. It's when the blood is going to your arms to fight off a threat or to run, in your limbs and your legs. So this can feel like kind of buzzy energy in the arms. This can feel like tense bracing, maybe in the shoulders or the belly. I see this show up a lot too in the belly, like this bracing and this tightening in the belly that you may be doing a lot of the time. Like, even notice your body right now. Do you notice this like kind of like gripping or tensing anywhere in your body? It can be in the shoulders, the belly, even this bracing in the chest. That's showing that you may be in some level of sympathetic energy. And what happens for dysregulation is you get stuck there. So we actually, sympathetic energy is really helpful, especially for highly motivated, driven, ambitious high achievers like ourselves, because that's what helps us meet deadlines, speak on stages. That's what really helps us with a lot of important things that we do in our business. But the problem is if we get stuck in that state where we're always kind of living there and we don't give our bodies this time to go into actual deep recovery. And when you're regulated, you're just able to flow through these states without getting stuck in one or the other. And again, with the dorsal, more of that calm, that what can be known as freeze energy, that can be even just like a deep meditative state. So again, it's not bad. There's no bad. You're not bad for being in any of these energies. They're not good or bad. It's just the optimal for you and for your health is to be able to move more fluidly between them. So, all it is, if we're thinking about nervous system regulation, it's how the body is responding and seeing a threat or safety. So, you hear a lot of like safety, nervous system safety, and you want to be safe and all of that. It's because your body communicates largely to your mind, not vice versa. So, your conscious thoughts, which are really only about 5% of your daily thoughts and behaviors, it's such a small percent that's in your mind, right? But a lot of the communication is actually coming up from your body. So if your belly's tensing, if your shoulders are tight, you're sending signals up to your brainstem and to the processing in your brain that's like, this isn't safe. I need to protect. I need to like fight off this threat. And so that's what that means with regulation. And being regulated just means you're able to flow more fluidly and you're able to have a bigger capacity for things to happen in your life. Because again, a threat could be someone screaming in your face, or it could be an email popping into your inbox and feeling like there's too much on. That could be a survival response, creating this feeling of not being safe.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for explaining it like that. I think I've ever heard it explained that way, and it makes so much sense. And I think of this sense of safety. Like obviously we have big threats or like the examples you just gave where like literally, something scary or weird is happening. But I'm
Mm,
also curious, like as women are continuing to grow up level their lives, maybe grow their businesses, go give up alcohol, all these different things. What where do you see like this sense of safety actually trying to protect us from just
mm,
what's unfamiliar? And so I know you're
yeah.
probably familiar with like Gay Hendricks and the Big Leap and the
Mm,
Upper Limit and stuff like that. So when is it actually that as we explode into different levels of responsibility or capacity or visibility or like a next level in our dreams or a next level in our personal development, why is it then that we're often met with this sense of like, this isn't safe? Your nervous system isn't
mm.
regulated to this new set point, and how do you guide clients here?
Yeah, this is such a good one for literally anyone. Any changes that you ever want to make in your life is going to create a response in the body. And our bodies are wired for safety, familiar. We have deep grooves in our brain that are formed from a young age, often before the age of 7 or 8, right? So, whatever you experienced in your life at any point in your entire life, but especially as a child, things that you witnessed, not even things that necessarily happened to you, but how you uniquely internalized them, create stories about what's normal and acceptable. And when you go out of that, your body and your brain naturally are going to fire this feeling of this isn't safe, even if it's the healthiest thing you've ever done and the best thing that you've ever done that you want. This is why I say you can write the same goal on your manifestation list or on your vision board or whatever every single year 17 times in a row, and then you end the year like, wait, how did I slip back down? How did I like not actually kind of stabilize that new level? Is because it actually feels super uncomfortable to your body. So you need to create these tools and these systems to build new pathways, to build new grooves and new baselines. So
Yeah.
anything that you do that's out of the normal is going to feel scary.
And did you have to like, as you eliminated alcohol from your life, or of maybe clients that you've worked with or talked to, or something like that, have you noticed like what that would look like in this change itself? Like, I mean, there's a lot of chaos and drama and, poor sleep that goes into this like
Mm,
familiar lifestyle with alcohol
yeah.
in it. And then all of a sudden you're treating yourself better and, you are taking care of yourself, you're going to bed earlier, all this kind of stuff. And so, like, you would think that that is the one that's going to help your nervous system more. And obviously, scientifically, neuroscientifically, it would, but it's unfamiliar. So there's a
Mm.
sense of sabotage. There's a sense of like rejection of like, no, that's not for me. I don't deserve things to be this good. So I'm curious, like, did you experience that? Do you know people have, and how would you work through that, specifically for like removing alcohol?
Yeah, so much, of course, is environment. This is like 101, not even, I mean, it does play in heavily to your nervous system, but also just when you have something that's normalized, so much of that comes from who you're surrounding yourself with, who you're around, what people are saying to you. And I know for me, when I went through alcohol specifically, that was a huge part of it is like, you're different now. And one of our core needs is also belonging. So that automatically brings up this like, wait, I want to actually fit in. And so that was a huge thing for me. If we're thinking about the body and how you can are you saying like how does this show up, how could this show up for people, or how could you expand your capacity to normalize this?
Yeah, I think expanding the capacity because I think
Okay.
it's like where that sabotage element comes in
Mm,
or just that retreat. Like it's like it's almost too good, it's too unfamiliar. I need to go back into that zone of safety,
mm,
which is
perfect.
actually the true chaos, but
Yes. So actually the method that I teach, the rise regulation method that I created, the very first part of that, the R, is to recognize. And so the first thing you can do is notice when you want to take a different action. So if we're using the example of you're doing the healthy things, you're getting good sleep, you're not drinking, and then what triggers, so recognizing what happens in the body when, let's use the example, you want to go drink. When you are like, oh, wait, this will feel more comfortable. Because when you can actually recognize a pattern, maybe your heart's racing, maybe again, your shoulders are tense, maybe you feel like this restless energy. If you can even notice that, the next stage is to interrupt it. So that's when we take a specific tool to calm your body and to send signals to your brain of actually, we're safe. Actually, we're good. But what happens so often is our brains are wired for efficiency. So not only are they wired for safety and familiar, they also are wired for efficiency. So they run the same programs, like we said before. You're really only operating from a very small percentage of your conscious thoughts. And then there's so much happening subconsciously. There's so much happening that you're not even fully aware of. You might be aware of, oh, geez, that's so annoying. I went and I got a drink when I've been feeling so good. Why did I do that? And you're kind of like, wait, what? Why did I do that? Because there's these subconscious patterns that are coming up. So you might notice the body starts getting uncomfortable. And then instead of pausing, recognizing that, getting curious, you just operate on familiar patterns, which,
Mm.
okay, when I feel uncomfortable, and I know we talked about this on the episode on my podcast when I interviewed you, is the social piece, and if you feel alcohol numb. So if you feel around large groups or in a social set of situations, if you haven't handled that, if you haven't learned how to navigate that without alcohol, of course, the familiar patterns like, let me grab a drink, let me grab a drink to ease this discomfort. So the first step is to recognize what's your body doing before you take the action. So whatever action that you're wanting to change, let's use the example of getting a drink, like what happened before that. That's actually what you want to pinpoint and look at so that you can begin to recognize what sets that off and get to the root of that. And then put in these specific tools to interrupt it in your body. And then the S is you switch it in your mind, you switch your thought process around it. Because oftentimes we can think one thing and we can easily shift that into being another true thing. Like you may have heard that fear is just excitement without the breath. So if our body behaves the same way when we're really afraid as it does when we're really excited. So that's a really common example of you can switch I'm afraid to I'm excited really quickly. So we switch that in the mind. We get our mind on board, we get our body on board, then we get our mind on board, and then we allow this spiral of expansion where we repeat this. So we
Mm.
catch those triggers, we interrupt them in our body, we switch the thought in our mind of getting curious what's happening. Okay, let me switch that to something that's more true for me right now. And then we continue to expand and spiral up.
Mm. That's such a good practice to do. And I'm wondering, this is a similar question, but kind of different context. I see the same thing happening when people grow businesses because there is this passion that people have, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to go, launch this thing. I'm going to grow my business. I'm going to, maybe quit my job and all this kind of stuff. But there's so much uncertainty that comes with being an entrepreneur. There's so much complexity as well. There's always this constant improvement. You're never like sitting on your laurels, right? It's this constant growth game.
Yeah.
It can feel like this up and down type of thing. And you love what you do, but there might be some elements that you don't love as much, whether it's the
Mm,
tech or the marketing or the sales or something like that, right? So it's this whole
yeah.
ball game. And obviously, it's so worth it. We both, you and I, love it so
Yeah.
much. But I find this can be very unsettling for a lot
Yeah.
of people who don't know that this is what it's going to be like. Whether it's like, it's really, really fun the first 6 months and then it got hard, or like maybe a few years in and then this launch flopped and now their business feels like it's going downhill. So I see this pattern repeating a lot in business as well. And sometimes it's just like a capacity issue too. It's like your nervous system hasn't gotten used to holding as much complexity as, before you had this, assignment on your lap, basically.
Mm,
So I'm curious, especially because your work is around entrepreneurship as well, and you help a lot of business owners. Like, how do you see the nervous system flare up, let's say, in a dysregulated way?
mm.
And it's probably the same method, but like, what else do you help entrepreneurs specifically with in order to get back into that regulated nervous system?
So, such a good question. And any entrepreneur listening to this right now, I know both of us relate to this. I know anyone listening to this will have some moment where they'll be like, oh, yeah, I recognize that. So if you've ever been in a time where maybe you have something that is more high pressure, maybe you have, I mean, we were just talking about I'm writing and launching a book and I have a pretty tight timeline. I'm also launching a big event right now. So there's a lot of behind the scenes. There's a lot of this in between. But any business you have, there's often a little bit of a lag period where you're putting things in, you're investing time, money, energy, effort, you're putting things in, and then there might be a little lag pretty much all the time, right? Before those things pay back. So there's that in between space. And this is where I see a lot of this come up for people, that in between space of when they're stretching. Maybe you've raised your rates, maybe you've launched something big, maybe you made a big investment and you're like, all in, yeah, let's go. This is so exciting. And then you feel the lag and then it feels like pressure. And people do one of two things. The thing that I see happen most often with entrepreneurs, because they're usually very driven, high achieving, like go get it mentality, is they go into this overdrive fight or flight, and that becomes push, force, get this done, figure this out, launch something now, fix this problem. And so that's a lot of when I see this dysregulation come up is when it comes into this overdrive to fix. And actually, what happens when we are in a dysregulated state, if we're looking at how this relates to our business, we our brain shifts what's important, what areas of the brain turn on, and the prefrontal cortex, which processes our really logical, long-term, grounded, innovative thought process, like problem solving, doesn't get a lot of energy. Instead, we're focused on, again, our limbs to fight off or flee a threat. So we're not actually thinking to our full capabilities and being able to solve problems. Another aspect that's massively affected by this is connection. So connection to yourself, connection to other people, being able to be present. Have you ever pressed go live in the beginning of your or spoken on stage and you're like, my mind just went blank? I had someone tell me this recently, like, I've done all these trainings, I know this inside and out, and every time I press go live, my mind empties. And I can think of this when I started teaching yoga. It was the same. It was like being in the spotlight. I had to have like super detailed notes. I clung to those notes so heavily, like because I was in this sympathetic surge of like, I gotta go. And people in the class loved it. They had a great class. I taught hot power yoga, so it was pretty intense, so it was good for a sympathetic surge. But nobody else noticed. But it's like you can notice these patterns running behind the scenes. And that's often what I see. I see things like spinning. I see this a lot with prices of like, no, I couldn't charge those prices, or they raise the rates and then they start like feeling in this push force. They had one person say the rates were too high and then they want to launch something cheaper, or they say like, I just don't think I can hold these rates. So those are all examples of when the body is getting into this like, we're not safe. We need to fix this. We need to do something else. And it's a lot of those graspy actions in business that don't support you long term, that don't support the sustainable growth. They may give you a quick cash injection now, but they don't actually support sustainable growth in both your body and your business long term.
Yeah. So what would be some examples of like the graspy versus like the very calculated, like more innovative moves that you're talking about?
Yeah, so with the example with lifting the rates, more of a graspy move would be like, oh no, someone said no, it's not feeling the way I want. Let me go launch this like mid-tier program, or let me go launch this like low ticket thing to get that quick dopamine hit of like, okay, this is working, there's momentum again, instead of being able to create more of that safety in their body, staying rooted into what they know they're creating and what they're building, and creating that regulation, that safety in their body allows them to tap back into that long game thinking and planning. I even share this simple exercise that I do every single day before I work now. This for me, again, I've been a yoga instructor for 12 years. I don't actively teach public classes now, but this is something like meditation, everything I've always known is helpful, but having a regular practice, like I didn't really solidify until I realized the depth of the body and the nervous system and how this actually impacts your ability to get work done a lot quicker because you're focused, you're not frantic. I can think of a recent example actually with having so much going on, having so many things that I need to do with the event and the book. and having a couple hours where I didn't do my practice right off the bat. And it was just like all these little tasks that weren't needle movers and were like keeping me busy. Like, oh, let me go send this email and this email, and I'm going to do this outreach and I'm going to DM that person. I'm going to do this. And it's like, yeah, all of those things are good to do at some point, but they're very kind of like low hanging fruit, dopamine hit graspy things because I was feeling this energy. And so it's like, no one's immune to this. We still feel it. It's just, can you recognize it and can you interrupt it and do something about it? So it would be the same, like the 5 minute practice that I do every single day is super simple. It's usually the same thing where I shake my limbs because sympathetic energy, again, you need to mobilize the energy. So that's such a good practice just to shake your limbs, shake your body for like just a minute or two, and then twist side to side, kind of hitting your ribs as you twist for again a minute or two. And then I do hands to heart and belly and do 4-4-8 breath because the longer exhale taps into the parasympathetic or more of that safe, calm, centered energy. Those three things paired together for me really allow me to drop into that clear thinking. And from that space, I journal a couple questions, a couple key focuses of things that I have going on right now, and I feel pulled to the one that's most important. I'm able to make that kind of clear, grounded decision. And then I go and I get the focused work done and get so much more done than the other example that I gave. If I'm just like, oh my God, there's so much to do, and I'm kind of spiraling and thinking of all these things.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And so you do that every morning.
Not in the morning because I have a 2 year old that I'm home with. But so usually on the days that I don't have childcare, I'll do it in the morning. On the days that I do have childcare, I'll do it but as soon as I start my work block, I do it.
Oh, okay. That's also great to know because sometimes we're like, it has to get done first thing or else it like totally F's up. It's not going to work.
Right.
And
I
it's like,
mean,
how many
great.
things?
Great if you have that life, but my toddler wakes me up at 5 a.m. and is like pulling me out of bed. So not a reality for me at this point in my life, but I love that for you if you can.
Yeah. And it's also like drops the perfectionism. Like, okay,
Yeah,
how many things can we fit in the morning? It doesn't always have to get done then.
totally.
Like, do it there. And it sounds so short. And have you found like that these three things that you do are like the magic secret sauce, or do you think it's like any kind of grounding or any kind of like centering that also would work?
These for me, there's a lot of different tools. And I try to give, like, even in the chapter in the book where I'm giving all of the tools in the book that I'm writing, you want to pair the tools to your state. So there's a lot of different quick tools like this. But if you, like, for me, someone who runs like very sympathetic, like I'm someone who runs fight or flight. Like I'm never really in the dorsal. I'm like, go, 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 push, get it done. And I've been like that for a long time, definitely stems from my childhood, all of the things. But for me, a big piece of that, if I just say, okay, just sit and breathe, then it actually feels pretty unsafe. Even with 12 years of teaching and doing a ton of yoga and all of those things, there are certain times where that actually doesn't help me because it's like dropping right into stillness is actually activating the no, I need to move. I need to get things done. I need to like, this is so unproductive. So that is actually not helpful for me. And there's a lot of people, this is why I say, like, people that are like, you just need to meditate for 5 minutes a day and then everything. It's like, no, you don't actually. That could make you feel way worse. You need to find the right tools for the state that you're in. So that's why for me, the shaking, like, if you had more of this really dorsal, calm, like, what's the point? Why do anything? That's the other end of the spectrum. So that, you might meet yourself in that calm space and then build the energy up. It's like meet yourself where you're at. But because I run more sympathetic, more like go, 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 I meet myself with the energy. I meet my like literally like shaking, jumping, twisting, like mobilizing the energy that's already in my body. And that allows me to come to more stillness. And this is why I think I taught hot power yoga as well, because it's like you burn off all of that sympathetic energy and then you drop into more stillness.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Okay, so we've been hinting about your book, and I'm sure we talked about a few of the topics that have already been in there, but tell us a little bit more about it and what, readers could expect when it comes out.
So exciting. So this is really the female entrepreneurs, I would say, like Bible guide manifesto for scaling a business in a way that feels nourished, I like to use the word nourish around the nervous system because I do think there's a lot of different associations with regulation, but basically growing your business from this regulated space and how your body actually impacts your strategy so heavily. And your strategy also impacts how your body responds. If you have a million things on your calendar and you're not getting paid very well for them and you feel like you're, I mean, this was also me. These are all things that I've lived through. You know, I was a full-time yoga instructor with a wellness events company doing all these pop-up events and meeting people for coffee all day and doing all these collabs and doing a ton of yoga classes that sometimes I got paid like $15 for, like doing all of this stuff, running busy, 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 but not making any money that actually nourished and sustained my lifestyle. That's dysregulating. So the strategy really supports the body because if you're doing a lot and you're not able to make the income that allows you to feel stable, and not to say that any number is what creates safety, but it definitely helps, right? If you have monthly reoccurring revenue, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50K coming in every single month, that's going to create at least some of that. Oh, I know I have this coming in. I know there's like something to plan around. And then you can look at the body because those two things weave together. I often use the analogy of I see growing a business like a rowboat and a yacht. The vessel is your body. So if you are in a rowboat, you've got these little wooden oars and you're paddling upstream, you might reach your destination with the best navigation system, aka your strategy, but you're going to be tired, exhausted. You might not want to ever do it again. Like I can think of myself out on the lake in a windy day, paddleboarding and like, oh my God, paddling against the current on the way home. And you're like, that was exhausting. I didn't think I was going to make it, but I like made it, but it was exhausting. And I don't think I ever want to do it again. It's like that energy versus the yacht. If you have a paper map, you might be kind of going in circles. So you need both. You need the strategy that supports the body and the body that carries you further faster utilizing the strategy. That's what the book's about, basically in a
Yeah.
nutshell.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for it to come out. When we have it, the link will be in the show notes too for like pre-orders and stuff like that. And I think it's just so fascinating to take this, very ambiguous topic that like it
Mm,
is being, kind of just like thrown up there on social media posts and actually become an expert and really be able to, debunk the myths about it, show the practical applications, because I think that's like a huge thing too. It's like do this, do that, and you're like, but like what, you know what I mean? What's actually
why?
changing? Why would I do
Mm-hmm.
this and stuff like that? And then show the through line with our goals as well, is that this isn't just
Mm,
like a nice to have, but like you're saying, it is literally the capacity that you need to get to where you want to go. So I'm super
mm.
excited for it to come out, and congrats. I know it's so much to
Thank
like write a
you.
book and have an event come out. You're like a true thought leader, and
Mm,
it just makes such a big legacy because like our social media posts last, less than 24 hours. And this is really like what builds such a beautiful brand and has so much transformation and change embedded in it for years, right? Like the book
mm,
is truly timeless and stuff like that. Okay, I wanted to just end on one more question. This is a little bit of gossip. So I saw that, you and I are both into Amanda Francis. She is,
mm.
the self-prescribed money queen. And she recently got on a reality TV show, The Housewives of Beverly Hills. And I haven't watched any of it yet, but I'm just super interested in the concept of like, what would it look like to have, someone from the coaching industry in, a show like that, again, I don't even know enough about the housewives, but I'm
Yeah.
guessing a lot of women inherit money or married rich and stuff like that. And
Mm,
here is like a self-made woman who's doing something a little out of the ordinary for like the normal world and stuff like that. And I know that I saw on your post that she recently like declined a drink or something and was being shamed about it. I'm just so curious, like, what's your take on all of that and the little, gossip piece we'll end with?
oh my God, yeah. So I, like you, have actually never watched the show. I'm not really a TV person in general. I've never really have been. And I know like all my college friends and everything love the Real Housewives. So I've heard a ton about it. And when I heard she was going to be on it, I literally went and skipped ahead to all of her parts because I just wanted to see like what is it going to be with her. And I saw, yeah, she was at this like social painting night and they offered her a drink. She's like, no, I'm good. And one of the other ladies was like, oh, you're not gonna, or whatever, just gave her a hard time about it. And then as she's talking about it later, she's like, what, are you gonna shame me for making good life choices? And I was just like, yes, this is so amazing to see someone, especially in a setting like that, where again, it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, where To most people, you're weirder not to drink. To a lot of people, I think in our circles now, it's a lot more normal. Like a lot of the people that I spend time with now, which are also very successful people, don't drink. So I guess it depends again on your environment, but I thought that was so interesting, and I just loved that she owned it. She wasn't like, "Oh, not tonight," or "Oh, not right now." She's just like, "Yeah, if I'm not gonna drink, like, what are you that's ridiculous that you're gonna make fun of me for that."
Yeah, I love that. And just from as far as I know, like Amanda Francis has been alcohol free for years. And it's just something that, she did have in her life. And then she's like, this isn't really helping me like grow and,
Mm,
have the clarity and the like, innovative ideas to the
yeah.
next level. And just is like unapologetic about, not having it. And, it is so true. I love how you said, like, for making good life choices.
Yeah.
Like it's so ironic. It's such a twist, and hopefully like we need more of those mainstream conversations too, to like kind of
Mm,
shift the paradigm on the head because we on one hand have this idea that like success and luxury equals like champagne on yachts
mm,
and a fine wine collection and drinking, whenever, but it's like but in real life it doesn't. It doesn't. It just like does not compute, you know what I mean? And like
mm,
you said, so many people in these circles of like just very successful entrepreneurs and authors and leaders, they don't drink. And I just want to
yeah.
make that so much more, readily public and available to everybody and have people like you on the show that really bring that philosophy into, execution in your life. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, I love even at retreats, I've had non-alcoholic. I've even offered like non-alcoholic champagne or something like that because there's so many other things that you can do, or mocktails, or, like herbal drinks. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, keep the glamour, just not the
Yeah,
hangover,
keep the
right?
glamour. Have the fun
Amazing.
glass.
Awesome. And where can people find you and learn more from you before we close this out?
Instagram's generally the best place. It's at Kat Cynewski on Instagram, and my website is katcynewski.com.
Amazing.
So
Well,
you'll
we'll have
probably
all
want to
of
link
that
those.
in the show notes below. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for being a guest on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on.